In May of 1945, American authorities sat a 7-year-old girl in a room and forced her to watch film reels of the newly liberated Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. She was looking directly at mass graves, skeletal survivors, the absolute darkest physical evidence of a collapsed regime. The child in the chair was Etta Goering. Her father was Hermann Goering, the powerful supreme commander of the Luftwaffe. Her godfather, a man whom she simply called Uncle Adi, was Adolf Hitler. To the German press, she was the Nazi crown princess. For her first 7 years, Etta's reality was an isolated, state-sponsored fairy tale. She was shielded entirely from the suffering her father engineered, raised in an environment of absolute wealth and certainty. The Luftwaffe, using military labor and resources, built her a miniature replica of Frederick the Great's palace. It was 50 meters long, complete with a working theater stage where she performed plays for an audience of one, herself. This equation outlines the core Allied strategy for post-war Germany: denazification through confrontation. The strategy assumed that if a highly indoctrinated population was forced to look at the unvarnished truth, the psychological shock would break their allegiance. The Americans running the internment camp expected the horrific film footage to shatter the child's reality. They operated on the belief that logical truth and skeletal proof would be enough to break the spell of a monster. That glittering universe disappeared almost overnight in the spring of 1945. The Third Reich collapsed. Hitler expelled Göring from the party in a paranoid rage, and American forces captured Etta and her mother in the Bavarian Alps. She went from royalty to a prisoner in a matter of days. Inside the Camp Ashcan internment facility, the Americans initiated their re-education program. They tested their psychological theory by exposing the 6-year-old directly to footage of the mass graves at Dachau and the liberation of Bergen-Belsen. The authorities waited for the shock, the tears, and eventually the condemnation of her father. It never happened. American officer Johnny Doyle observed Etta closely during this period. In his official notes, he wrote that the child remained bright, perky, and polite. She behaved exactly as if she hadn't just watched documentary evidence of her father's massive crimes. The Americans were left with a profound dissonance. They had presented a 6-year-old with the most graphic evidence of mass murder possible, and she simply continued her day as the well-trained daughter of a Reichsmarschall. At the Nuremberg trials, the international community presented Hermann Goering with thousands of documents proving his guilt. Sentenced to hang on October 15, 1946, he crushed a smuggled cyanide capsule in his teeth, cheating the executioner by hours. With the father dead, the new German state focused on the surviving family. The denazification courts initiated a second approach: severe material punishment. The government seized 30% of the family's assets and froze the rest. Etta went from private trains and state dinners to a small, unheated cottage in the Bavarian countryside. Because the isolated property lacked modern plumbing, she spent her early adolescence hauling heavy wooden buckets of water from a freezing outdoor well. This intervention relied on a specific logic. If the daughter was forced to physically suffer the consequences of her father's actions, the daily hardship would eventually lead her to renounce him. Instead of a moral awakening, Etta watched her mother scrub floors and hauled water from a well, connecting her current misery not to her father's crimes, but to the people now holding her in a cottage without electricity. In the 1950s, a now adult Etta began fighting back. She didn't join political movements or stage protests. She hired lawyers. She launched a 15-year legal campaign to reclaim a specific piece of her childhood. Her target was the Kranich Madonna, a priceless Renaissance masterwork. Her attorneys argued a technicality. Because the painting was a personal baptism gift given to an innocent infant, it rightfully belonged to Etta, regardless of its origins in her father's plundered art collection. The case wound through the courts until 1968, when the Federal Court of Justice handed her a total defeat. They ruled her claim violated both law and morals, and the painting was sent to a museum in Cologne. Etta didn't see a victory for justice in the court's ruling. To her, the legal system wasn't reclaiming stolen property. It was a modern state continuing to punish her for the name on her birth certificate. After 4 decades of absolute public silence, Edda finally agreed to an interview with Swedish television in 1986. Observers looked for any signs that time and distance had softened her perspective. Instead, she revealed an impenetrable armor of denial. On camera, she suggested the Holocaust was exaggerated. She denied her father's highly documented morphine addiction. She spoke only of a warm, gentle man who loved her. When asked to summarize her father's historical legacy, she offered a single verdict. The only thing Hermann Göring did wrong was lose the war. Her devotion required complete social isolation. She spent her adult life working quietly as a medical technician in Munich. She never married, and she never had children, living alone in a modest apartment packed with heavy, dark wood furniture from the 1930s. It didn't have to be this way. Bettina Göring, Hermann's great-niece, inherited the exact same family history. Her response to that dark legacy was to undergo surgical sterilization, explicitly choosing to permanently end the Göring bloodline. These two women shared the same bloodline and the same inheritance. Yet while one chose to end her family tree to protect the future, the other spent 70 years tending to its roots. Edda Göring died quietly in December 2018 at the age of 80. When German authorities finally confirmed her passing months later, they revealed a highly unusual, secretive decision regarding her remains. Her burial site at Munich's Waldfriedhof Cemetery was kept strictly unmarked, and its specific location was hidden from the public. The state feared that if the site were known, neo-Nazis would turn it into a pilgrimage shrine. She had never committed a crime or led a political movement. Yet, 73 years after the fall of the Third Reich, the modern German government still viewed the symbolic power of Hitler's goddaughter as deeply dangerous. The Allies built their post-war strategy on the idea that exposure to the truth would automatically cure the sickness. But Edda Göring's life suggests a different reality. A state can dismantle a military empire, seize the stolen artwork, and force a population to look at the horrific evidence. But you cannot punish a human being into change.